What you're seeing on your screens is footage of Vishal Sika and the chairman of the Infi board, Severance, getting set to address the media. Like we told you, the Infosys board has decided to call a press conference to clear the air amid the latest controversy to hit corporate India. Earlier in the day, we had heard Vishal Sika interact with and talk to analysts as well as the top investors of Infosys. He charted out his growth trajectory at the second largest IT firm of the country, all his achievements at Infosys since he took over. We also saw Narayana Murthy tell ET Now that he has laid out all of his issues and the concerns that he has of the things that have been taking place at Infosys of late, and he does hope that the Infosys board will address them. So perhaps a softening of stance, but no way can it be called an end to that controversy. I think we're just seconds away from the Infosys board addressing the press. They're not shying away. They are coming out and presenting their side of the story. In the past, when we've seen controversies hit corporate India, for example, the recent one between Ratan Tata and Cyrus Mistry, we didn't see what we're seeing today, that is, parties come out and speak openly to the press.
Independent Director. On VC, we have Professor Jeff Lehman, Independent Director and Chairman of the Nomination and Remuneration Committee, Dr. Punita Kumar Sinha, Independent Director. And on call, we have joining us Ms. Kiran Majumdar Shaw, Independent Director, Mr. D.N. Prahlad, Independent Director, Professor John H. Mendi, also Independent Director, and Mr. Ravi Venkateshan, Independent Director. We would like to begin this press conference with an opening remarks from our Chairman, and will then open the floor for questions. Mr. Seshasai, please.
Thank you, and good evening. Welcome to this press conference. I must first explain why we thought we should have this conference. All of you have been having a lot of questions for the last few days. We couldn't have exhausted all these questions if we had to go one by one. And we were very keen that we should have an opportunity to answer every one of your questions. And therefore, this is going to be a long press meet. And we are here to take as many questions as you think you have. As Sarah was mentioning, I'm joined here by all my colleagues on the board, either physically here or on the video or through the telelinks. So I must thank all of them. Before I begin, I must also thank our employees who have been in the last few days been completely undisturbed and undiverted, have been discharging their responsibilities to the clients. And I'm equally thankful to all the investors who have also remained pretty unperturbed. So my very sincere thanks to all these stakeholders. You know, the last few days, a lot of you have been describing this as a battle, some war paint, bugles. I must say that I don't look at this as a battle. A battle happens if you have two people with two conflicting objectives, two different interests, conflicting interests. But here we have a situation where you have some stakeholders, the founders, and others along with them, who have nothing other than the best interest of the organization in their mind. And obviously there'll be a lot of passion, because if you have invested your entire life in building an institution, it's very natural that you will have a great deal of more passion in the interest that you have. But here we are a bunch of professionals with no other interest than discharging our professional responsibilities in the best interest of the company. Truly, therefore, there is no conflict of interest. There is convergence of interest. And to that extent, I don't think that this is any battle. For sure, you will have differences in views, differences in perceptions, differences about business judgments. And it is our job as members of the board to be open to and to listen to all interests. If you can cut out all the noise, but if you just take the substance of what is being delivered to us in terms of messages, they are important messages, and it is our obligation to listen to these voices, assimilate these messages, be sensitive to these comments, and calibrate our action. So we look at it purely as an exercise that we're going through now to understand the various different viewpoints and interests that have come about. So therefore, I don't look at this as a big battleground, one pitched against the other. And I think I would request you, therefore, just to take that completely away from your mind. The objective of this press conference is primarily to look at all the issues, at least all the principal issues that have been raised with regard to the governance practices. This institution has been built on the foundations of very, very strong governance values, and we're very proud to be a part of this institution. And it is our duty as trustees of this organization to uphold and to enhance these values. And it is in that context I want to lay before you the facts and figures and the processes involved in the governance with respect to some of the key issues that have been brought about. So let me go one by one. I want to start somewhat chronologically, and let me start with the issue that has been raised by some of you also with regard to the appointment of some directors on the board of the company. We have had some comments about the appointment of Dr. Punita Sinha. We are very proud to have someone like Dr. Punita on our board, an extremely accomplished person, someone who has very, very high academic achievements and a very strong professional career. And I'm sure that you will agree that a woman should not be judged by the profession of a spouse. And in that sense, I really do not think that there is any governance issue. On the other hand, I think we are very proud of the very rich diversity we have on our board. We have 3 women directors, and therefore I feel proud that we have done this, and we've had overwhelming support from the shareholders. And therefore I don't think that we look at this as a governance issue. The second is the appointment of Mr. Prahlad. Again, some of you have raised questions about his position as an independent director. Let me assure you that Mr. Prahlad qualifies as an independent director by all criteria laid down in the legislation and in spirit. There is no doubt that Mr. Prahlad was suggested to us when we are looking for people to be brought onto the board with a knowledge of the company's business, a very deep knowledge of the business. And the proposal was, Mr. Prahlad's name was proposed by the founders. But then we went through the process. We have a process for inducting people on our board, and that was applied to Dr. Punita Sinha, and it was equally applicable to Mr. Prahlad. 4 of us went through a process of having a meeting with him, and we are very proud to have Mr. Prahlad because he brings a very rare understanding of, and a deep understanding of the business, which is very, very useful from the point of view of the board, considering that we have a board consisting of many people from many different walks of life who have come together with perhaps not as deep an understanding of the business history. And therefore, it is important to bring some of these perspectives, and we are extremely pleased to have Mr. Prahlad. And I don't see that as a governance issue. Let me then come to the next issue, which is Vishal's compensation issue. I think this has been sufficiently been explained over time, several times over. But if you don't mind, I will repeat this again because firstly, I want to give the data points, and then I will give you the process. The data points are that we had the revision, as you all know, that his compensation was raised to 11 million. But as we have already explained, the fixed component of that, the cash component of that, came down from 5.08 to 4 million. The variable element went up, and it had 2 components to it. One component was linked to the longevity of Vishal in the company, which you will all agree is extremely essential for the stability of the company. And it is normal practice, therefore, to have longevity-linked incentives, and that was one component of 2 million. And the rest was linked to the performance. And as compared to the earlier package, the performance-linked package which went up was tied to a very, very high level of targets. There was a trajectory which we discussed and agreed, and this was a 2 to 3 month process. And aligning the CEO's compensation to shareholder value creation is a very contemporary practice. I'm sure that all of you will agree. And the fact that we did this not just arbitrarily, what is the process? The process that we went through was having a consultant, a global consultant, to benchmark his compensation with that of the peer companies. We looked at other US-based companies and looked at what is the benchmark compensation, linked it, made sure that that was robustly done in a construct that ensured performance-driven compensation. It included longevity, included compensation, and it was meant to ensure that we give a motivational package for Vishal to lead this company into the future with very ambitious targets. So that is a process that we went through. And the data point at the end of that was that we had more than 98% vote in favor. And therefore, we had the resounding shareholder approval for that. I recognize that there will be some shareholders, there are some shareholders who believe that this compensation level is excessive in the context of history, in the context of certain other benchmarks. But we applied our mind, and we did what we thought was in the best interest of the company. And I'm perfectly happy to accept and acknowledge there could be equally valid viewpoints which are different to our viewpoints. But it is the nature of things that we have to do what is best and therefore what is acceptable to the vast majority. There was a question related to Vishal's compensation being done on a postal ballot. In many, many companies, and it's normal practice that you have a compensation package which is approved by the board, and then it is taken up to the shareholders for approval or ratification from an earlier date. That's not uncommon. It is perfectly legitimate under the Act. Since we were revising his compensation midway in a different construct, optically this was higher, but it was a different construct. We thought that it is important to get the shareholder approval before we commenced the revised package. And that is the reason why we went into postal ballot before 1st of April when this would have commenced. And that, I think, is good governance practice. Most of you would have seen that in the AGMs that you have, now, of course, in the AGMs, you don't have voting by show of hands, and therefore AGM as a forum for voting has lost its significance. The forum for meeting certainly is there. Forum for listening to inputs is certainly there, but no longer for voting. And in the process of both having a postal ballot and an electronic voting, we are actually into contemporary practices which are more real time than in the past. And I believe, therefore, in our view, it was a perfectly legitimate and, in fact, a good governance practice. And we had, as I said, overwhelming support for that. So I'd like to, again, emphasize that we do not believe that there has been any issue relating to governance. And then I must come to this, the most celebrated issue, the most talked about issue of the severance pay of Rajiv Bansal. It must have consumed a phenomenal amount of newsprint in the last several months. But let me say that I think all that I've heard, all that we have listened to, read, we certainly think that there is a lot of validity. And I'll come to that as to why I think so. Validity in all the observations made. The founders have made observations, they've given their comments, and I respect these comments. If you look at both the data points and the process and application of mind on that, the severance pay that was agreed to be paid at the time that he separated from us was 17.38 crores. That is a data point. What is actually paid was 5 point something. And that is because that this was stopped with effect from April 2016, suspended, and the reasons for that were explained. These are two data points. What are the processes in this? In determining the severance pay that was paid in October 15, at that time we explained the circumstances in which we had a mutual agreement for his separation. And at that time, there was a business judgment, there was an application of mind by the board, and this was agreed to be paid. In retrospect, in looking behind, I have no hesitation in saying that perhaps that judgment would have been different if circumstances were different, or if the processes had been there. And what was the process that I thought was not, or we thought was not in place? And the process gap was that we had subjectivity in determining the severance amount. It was a judgment. The management made some judgment about this, and the board thought that the judgment was right. But it would serve everybody's interest better if the subjectivity was taken out and we had a more, shall I say, certain package available as a part of the employment contract. So the learning from that was that the subjectivity element should be taken away. And then we went on to a process change by which we looked at, through a consultant, what is the severance payable for various geographies, for different types of, different levels of executive positions. And then we benchmarked that, and then we wrote new employment contracts as a part of a revision that we did for all our key management personnel. And therefore, I could say that given the fact, the fact is that the perception was that there was no application of mind. There was an application of mind, there was a subjective element, and clearly that we should not have that level of subjectivity, that our judgment should not be in question later on, and therefore having learned from that, we made this correction, so no longer will it be subjective. It has already been a part of the employment contract, and when we made the revision for our key managerial personnel in October 2016. So that was not something where I believe that there was a governance issue. Business judgments could be wrong, could be right, perception could be different. We accepted that. But what is most important is this issue relating to this suspicion that this was hush money, and that was deeply disturbing. We had a whistleblower complaint, which is an anonymous whistleblower complaint, which suggested that there could be some kind of silence money paid to Rajiv, and that was the reason why this was so high. I think Mr. Murthy mentioned that there is a proverb that if you drink milk under a toddy tree, a palm tree, you'd still be mistaken for drinking toddy, and that's very correct. And therefore, when they connected the dots, it appeared that this money was paid because there was some silence money in it. So when the first anonymous whistleblower complaint was received, many companies that I know of do not look at anonymous complaints, but good practice, which is what this company has always followed, is to look at whistleblower complaints regardless of whether it's signed or anonymous. And when that came to our notice to the board, we immediately wrote back to the same mailbox saying that if you have any evidence of wrongdoing, could you identify a law firm to whom you can give this documentation and we'll pay for that? Let's conduct that. We didn't get any reply. We sent a reminder, there was no reply. And then we said that, no, we have to now do this ourselves. And there was a detailed investigation that was done, which, as you know, was put out in the website. And again, to repeat something that you already know, the investigation was done by an independent law firm, was overseen by a global law firm, was shadowed by our statutory auditors, and then we came to the conclusion that there was no intention to silence. And with that, we said, yes, we now, because of the concerns that had been expressed, which is something that we should be cognizant of, we said we will put that out in the website, and that was done promptly in October. And therefore, we think that the process, when this was brought up as a governance issue, we'd applied our mind, and we were clear that this is the best process to be gone through, and we indeed had consultations with various experts and law firms to make sure that we are not slipping up on the required processes, and we were then convinced that, yes, we have done the process. And we have come to the conclusion that there was no intention to silence, and this money was not linked to any silencing. There's no, therefore, in that sense, any impropriety on this. We believe that that has been put to rest. We now have seen again another bout of the same story getting repeated, the same answer. It is an old case, an old answer, and that's the same answer. There are no new answers to it. This case had a certain history and a certain conclusion to that, and that remains the same. So we'll only be repeating, whether it comes now or later, is the same thing. And then we have the next issue of David Kennedy. David Kennedy had an employment contract which specified like I said, this is no judgmental issue. This is not a subjective thing. There was a definitive clause in that agreement which said that if the separation happened not for cause, then he's due 12 months severance pay. This is, by the way, since this became a point of interest, I had also done quite a bit of research on this now. I think I'm now getting to be an expert on severance pay. If any of you have any requirement for consultation, please let me know. There are a number of surveys, and the benchmarks for the CEO, one level below CEO, in the US market is fairly well known. And we didn't find that this is out of sync with that. And when you have, therefore, a separation which is not for cause, and there is a provision in the agreement, and it is the duty of the organization to honor that agreement. That's contractually, that's the right governance practice, which is what we followed. Now, both in the case of Rajiv and in the case of David, we've gone through the disclosures as required. There have been questions raised whether the disclosures are adequate. I can tell you the process that we went through. Everything has to go through the process. The data point is that we had made disclosures as required in the case of Rajiv in the January 16, and then in the filing, 20-year filing in April, and in David Kennedy again in the quarterly filing. The disclosures, the process that we went through was to make sure that the disclosures were seen to be adequate not only internally, but also by our external disclosure councils. Therefore, you have to accept, a board has to accept professional judgments on how much and what we need to disclose. And in fact, in this company, there's always been a maxim to say that if you're in doubt, disclose. I've heard Murthy say this, and it's a great policy. We were not in doubt because everything was done in accordance with the directions and the advice of professional people, and therefore, we made those disclosures. Let me come to another set of issues. These are the issues that have been talked about in relation to governance. Another set of issues relates to what I would call the profligacy of the CEO. I've been asked this question: why is Mr. Vishal Sika using corporate jet? And I think Rupa has been at pains to say we do not have a corporate jet to start with. He has chartered flights, and I was looking, because of all those issues, I was looking at the travel details. By the way, we now put in a policy that the CEO expenses will be approved by the audit committee. I looked at it. And Vishal has been traveling in November, December. The data that I looked at was November, December, and January. You were traveling at about 60,000 kilometers, 50 to 60,000 kilometers per month. Per month. 8% of that was through chartered flight. So you bring the perspective on this. And I'd like to say that focusing on the cost without focusing on the value is a disservice. If you expect the CEO to be contacting customers, if you expect that he should be traveling this much to fulfill his responsibilities, and if he's delivering value, I think it is important that we have this equation between the cost and the value. And that's a similar situation with regard to another question about the Palo Alto office. So any of you who would be traveling to the Bay Area, you must go and see the current Palo Alto office. I think it is a fantastic place. It's a place where you would see that it's a very a place for promoting innovation. For your information, I think I have Vishal, his secretary, the CTO, and who else?
Sanjay,
And Sanjay, they all sit around one table in the open hall. Of course, Vishal thought that we should have an address in the high street. And therefore, he went ahead and said that we will take a place in high street because his belief was that we need to have the branding of this company not as a back office, but to be in the front office, to be in the right address. And therefore, he went ahead and took some place on rent, which again, he has discussed with me, the kind of innovative stuff that he's doing in the architecture of this place is something unbelievable. However, the figures that have been quoted about 1 million per month, truly you must relate not to what you would pay in India, but in a Bay Area, not in what you would do in Chicago, but in Bay Area, and you have to relate to that. And that again, a substantial part of this is already under sublease. So if you look at that, what is being picked up is one number without really looking at what is the true cost as it descends on the books, what is the true value that is meant to be delivered, and I think therefore the inference would quite often get wrong. I want to make just this point, and I'm open to looking at getting other questions to be raised. I think we need to recognize that a global company and a company that is in the cusp of a major transformational process, that's trying to rebrand itself, that's trying to motivate and bring in new talent, will have to be competitive in order to get the right talent, provide the right kind of atmosphere. The value delivery that you have from this globally competitive talent, which is going to be the driver, the motive force for the transformation, that shouldn't get missed out. I have no problem if you want to look at the cost part of that. But in the process, let's not look at the value part of that. And let's not forget the fact that this is a transformation, part of the transformation process. Having said this, one of my colleagues, Prahlad, made a very beautiful statement, and he said that we must have the soul of a small man. And that it's still a very valid dictum. It's a valid philosophy. And we should have that. There should be no expenditure which is incurred without value. And if there is anything, it is the responsibility of the management. And if it is coming to the notice of the board through the processes, it is the responsibility of the board to ensure that the cost value equation is well set. What will make that happen? What will make that happen is to have the right instruments of governance in place. Fundamentally, you need to have a very robust finance function. And I can tell you, since I've been on a certain number of boards and I've had the opportunity to look at different companies, the financial systems, the controls, internal controls in the financial systems that have been put in place in Infosys is a gold standard. And that is the fundamental instrument of governance. And that has been done over many years thanks to the visionary drive of the founders. That is the anchor. That's the foundation on which you build the business. And you've got a very robust internal audit process. I mean, I started my life as an internal auditor, and someone at that point of time told me that one day you might become a CEO, but when you become a CEO or a chairman, you will still be obsessed with internal audit, and that's true. And I do look at what internal audit does, and I'm glad to say that we have a very strong internal audit process. That's another instrument of governance. And you have an audit committee chaired by Rupa, who's very active and engaged. And therefore, we have the instruments to make sure that there are no aberrations to this. And we need a policy framework, we need a process of overseeing, we need the kind of scaffolding that is required to make sure that there is no, it's not going to fall down. All of that in place, and I want to assure you that these have not in any way diminished. The reason why we look at some of these numbers is because we're trying to look at it in isolation, sometimes partially true numbers, and then we are there giving explanations for that. I will stop on the issues relating to this high expenditure issue here. I'll move to the other part, which is the part relating to, on the governance, looking forward. What I have just now covered are issues which are well known. They have been explained many times over. Respect the comments, and I tend to go back and say, the fact that there is so much of comment and so much of excitement about this is probably because we have not done enough of communication. So one more bout of communication is not going to be excessive. So we will do that, and we are doing this now. But I think the more important thing I'd like to look at really is what do we do to go forward in terms of governance? This is a unique company, and I want to emphasize this fact. This is the one of its kind in terms of concept of governance. Other than the banks, you do not have companies of large size, let alone the size of Infosys, where you have a professional management and a professional board. And if you have to have a professional board and a professional management and an independent board, it's important that we have then a framework of governance. Why is it necessary? You have, in a company like Infosys, you have a vast number of shareholders, vast number of distributed shareholding. And therefore, you have many stakeholders, shareholders who have different interests, different outlook for the business, different need for representation in the board. And therefore, how do you system all together? How do you make sure that you are going to represent in the board the common ground of values, common ground of beliefs in terms of the strategic direction of a vast distributed shareholding? How do you do that? And how do you make sure that in the process of building this company's governance structure, we ensure that both the independence and the distributed interest of all the shareholders are adequately represented in the board? And how do you do that within a legal framework? That is the reason why we said that we'll have Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas to help us do that framework within the four corners of law. And please understand that this is an important issue. If you had a promoter-led organization or a family promoter-led organization, I'm not saying in all cases, and Infosys has always been an exception because it has always had professionals, independent voices on the board, but a very large number of companies, you will tend to see a board which has got a sort of a unified kind of a viewpoint reflecting somewhat the viewpoint of the promoter group or the chairman. But diversity of viewpoints, getting different kind of voices to represent the vast majority of shareholders, diverse group of shareholders is a daunting task, and that's what we want to achieve. And in order to do that, we must do this within a legal framework for doing this. We have a number of people coming up for retirement. We would need to have a succession planning. We have a succession planning, but we need to make sure that succession planning is not done arbitrarily in a manner that we get narrow focused with just one group representation. We need to distribute this. And to do all of that, we need the help of a firm of experts. And that is the reason why we said we will have Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas to help us. This is not a law firm to mediate. I think some of you got it wrong. This is not about mediation between two parties who are fighting. To start with, I said the whole notion of a fight is wrong. We don't look at it as a fight. We look at it as, in some cases, a passionate expression, and we understand the passionate expression of comments. We'll take the substance of that, and we have to move on. But in doing so, we need to have not arbitrary, not narrow-focused kind of decisions being taken. It's in board composition or in governance practices, and that's precisely why Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas had been appointed. We would continue to engage with all key stakeholders. And please take this clearly. We will engage, and we have been engaging with promoters. Somebody asked me this question, why are you not engaging with promoters? Wrong, untrue. We engage with promoters severally, collectively, and we get inputs from them. And similarly, we engage with a number of other key stakeholders. Just now is finished this morning an investor call. This is an engagement with a vast body of investors. This is an ongoing process of engagement. And we need to assimilate all this to make sure that we have a collective direction which represents the values. And that process of engagement will continue. And given the fact that we have the founders who have built this organization with a great deal of passion and made this an iconic institution of which we are all very proud of, we would certainly listen to them with much greater respect than even the others. But at the end of the day, we are answerable. We have the responsibility for all the 100% shareholders. We have a fiduciary responsibility that we have to discharge for the entire body of shareholders and stakeholders. It is from that perspective that we will engage, get inputs, make sure that what we can do, we will do. What we cannot do because of any other reason, we would decline to do that. And this is a process that has to go on, right? So that is the context in which Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas has been engaged. Lastly, I would say, we've had, in the last few days, and even before that, I must say, we got a phenomenal kind of interest in this organization. We live in a glass house. This is a good thing, because if we are living in a glass house, we cannot misbehave, which is good. Somebody is always looking at it. And that's our responsibility. That's a huge responsibility to live responsibly within the organization, within the framework, because we're in a glass house. But equally, I would make a request to say that if we are living in a glass house, please don't stare us too long, because we have to get on with our job. We have to get on with the job of delivering our obligations to the customer, and for the sake of the 180,000 employees we have, for all the shareholders we have, and indeed for the country, we just cannot get distracted. We just have to focus on our job. That is what we are trying to do. That's where I must thank both, again, the management and the employees and all the investors who have made this happen. And we do think that this will go behind. We have taken the substance, the learnings from what has been said. We will assimilate that. We will make sure that the next time that we make business judgments, that we are sensitive to these comments and we'll move forward. But I'll give you one assurance. There will be no dropping of scale in terms of our concern, our commitment to maintaining the gold standard of governance that this company is known for. I would sincerely urge you to therefore look at the facts and figures, look at the processes that I have looked at, then come to the conclusion. Thank you.
1 second. Chandra, 1 second. Just a second. Vishal, would you like to say something?
Before you go,
Q&A?
I would like to ask Vishal to make some comments about both the business come back to Q&A.
Vishal, would you like to say something?
Before you go,
Q&A?
I'd like to ask Vishal to make some comments about both the business and the matters relating to the
and board. Sesh, you had once used the phrase birds of passage. We are custodians of this institution, and this is a responsibility that we take incredibly seriously. While the management's primary responsibility is the performance of the business, the strategy and the execution of the business, and the board's is governance, as Sesh said. Nonetheless, let me say a couple of things about culture. As most of you who have followed us for the last 2.5 years know, the strategy that I have laid out for Infosys has 3 parts: renew, new, and culture. The culture is the fabric on which the company sits. My very first meeting, introduction meeting with Mr. Murthy, with Chris, with Mr. Kamath and Sesh in Delhi, in the guest house. That is how important it is in the company. I left here when I took this responsibility at Infosys. The deep adherence to the corporate governance, the integrity, the being the standard bearer in that front was one of the key reasons that I came here. So therefore, that responsibility of upholding that tradition is something that we take very, very seriously. So while our focus is on performance, while the management's focus, my and Praveen's focus is on performance, and we have done well in the last 2.5 years, there is a lot that we are proud of from a performance point of view, whether it is revenue growth or upholding the margins or restoring a sense of inspiration and in employees, and as reflected in the attrition numbers, or opening up the new frontiers for the company or the customer satisfaction. It is really the values, the cultural foundation that defines who we are in the end, and that is the one that makes us sleep easy or not sleep easy at night. So this is what I want to say. I want to thank all of you, by and large, for a balanced and fair coverage in the last few days. These are, of course, not easy times, and I in particular want to thank the employees in Infosys for carrying on the business, both our manager and Praveen and my management team, but also especially the employees on the ground. And I also want to thank the investors who have stood with us, and most importantly, our founders, those who have built this institution that we are now custodians of. It is a responsibility that I take extremely seriously, and I value greatly the advice that I get continuously from all sides.
We have paddles over here. If you could just ask for the mic, we'll get the mic to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr.
We need some order in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I know all of you want to ask questions, so please.
So,
I
Mr.
think-
Seshasai? Yes.
I will start with the first.
Okay, I think Chandra,
Yes, sir.
Chandra, Sajid, if you guys can hold on. Kritika, Chandra can go first, please.
Okay,
Please
so
go. Get the mic.
So good evening, Chandra here from 18 Hour. First of all, I want to thank you, for taking out the time to explain everything. I have a couple of questions for you and one for Vishal. So you've spent the last 45 minutes, explaining to us in detail on what the issues were, all the explanations. I'm sure you've spent significant number of hours perhaps explaining the same to the promoter group of Infosys. Why has it taken them 2 years and, yet they are not convinced? I mean, I got a mail from Mr. Murthy as early as today saying that he hasn't withdrawn his concerns. So why is the board not able to convince them on this front? Secondly, sir, all that you said is valid. Nothing illegal has happened. In fact, nothing unethical has happened, with respect to jets. But would you say this is more of a value judgment? Because the founder group of Infosys is always, being judged based on their frugality, how they live, compassionate capitalism. So would you say there's a difference as far as values are concerned, and that is what is not being understood? Vishal, I just have one question for Vishal. One question. He explained in detail about the circumstances under which Rajiv was paid. I agree totally with the subjectivity part, but he still hasn't elaborated on the circumstances, and that's where the speculation comes in. People are talking about, Panaya, people are talking about earnings. The circumstances part is where we are still not getting clarity. If you can give us some clarity on that, it'll be great. Thank you so much.
No, let her.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
As you say, I've been answering the same questions for several
Okay, just
several
the ground
months
rules.
now.
The ground rules, everyone. We have paddles here.
But I'll only make two requests. You have already asked one question, so please don't repeat it, right? And the second is that each one should have just one question. If you take on to 2 or 3 questions, then I don't think it's fair to the others. Okay, I think, this is not about values. There are different words that you use, and this is a matter of semantics. Culture is different, yes? There would be differences in culture. I mean, from one generation to another generation, there would be cultural changes. My son doesn't have the same belief that I have, and this is natural. And therefore, we have to manage these cultural changes, but within the framework of fundamental values. And I don't think that we have swerved from that. But I have no hesitation in saying, yes, this is the cultural milieu is different. And therefore, there would be difference in perceptions on this. Now, to go back to the first question, I think there is no point in our trying to answer the question as to why now, because I don't think that's going to take us anywhere. I would simply look at it, what is the substance of the message I'm getting, right? And is that substance something which we can internalize and be sensitive to and take forward? And if we haven't communicated enough, then there's another reason for to communicate. All of you have been asking the same question, right? Why only the founders? You have also been asking the same questions. You've covered it, I think, you covered it to death in last year. You've got the same questions again. Now, obviously, it makes interesting story, or you've forgotten what you did. I'll do it again. Because I think it's your job. I'm not going to say that shut out, this is not going to be any more acceptable. Because I think we are answerable. And I think we would take very seriously that a group of founders have any discomfort in this. It is our job to say that this is how it is going to be. If there are changes that we have made, learnings we have got, we will say that. And if there is no change to be made, and if we think that what we are doing is right, we will say that. So I think that is all that we should be focused on. If I get defocused and then start looking at anything else that is surrounding this kind of things, then I think we are not going to do our job. And we should simply be focused on just discharging our fiduciary responsibilities, no matter what.
Okay, Mr. Sika, thanks for clarifying.
No, sorry,
thanks for clarifying, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Let me answer.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying, sir.
No, I think let him answer.
Let me answer.
Sorry, you need to have some kind of order, otherwise we'll get into chaos.
Please hold on. We have Kritika asking.
Let
We'll
me-
get to you one by one.
Let me answer Chandra's question with regard to the circumstances. As I have mentioned, 30, 40 times, Rajiv is a brilliant colleague. He did an extraordinary job. He was a great CFO. We had the team chemistry issues within our management team, and so we reached a mutually agreed separation. This is what happened. There was nothing else. He conducted his job with the utmost integrity. He upheld those principles, and this is not to say over there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sesha
Kritika,
Sai,
please
as
go ahead.
far as you have clarified, and thank you for the point-to-point clarification. There have been suggestions with respect to specific employees, specific changes being made. Can you outline
Made in the board?
specific changes that have been recommended by the founders? I want to understand what are the changes, if at all, what are the suggestions that are being implemented or considered by the board at this point in time, if you could clarify on that. And I completely understand, I don't want you to repeat the point as far as Mr. Bansal's remuneration and severance package is concerned. You've clarified that. What I want to understand is that is there a case, the question that founders have raised, is that why were other CFOs not paid a similar amount? Is there a case here for creating a more uniform severance policy over here? Whoever could answer that. Thank you.
Okay, so the answer is that, as I said, after this situation, we said that, we cannot have a subjectivity. We cannot judge that particular.
Well, we're just having some technical difficulties, perils of bad network sometime, but also perils of live television. But this is the breaking story at this hour. The Infosys board coming out in full support, saying there are no issues with the promoters, that there is just engagement that is taking place, and they will continue to uphold the values of Infosys. They're just custodians, but addressing, point by point, all of the issues that have been raised of late. For example, the appointment of Punita Sinha with the Infosys chairman saying there is no corporate governance issue having Punita Sinha on the board, that it is a matter of pride given her illustrious career, academic accomplishments, and that nobody should be no woman should be judged by the profession of a husband. Clearly, laying to rest once and for all what the Infosys board thinks of Punita Sinha's being married to the former Minister of State.
But what we are discussing about is that not that 17.5 crores, by the way, it's not 23 crores, so 23 crores included an element which was due to him in any case for the work that he had done and just discharging his duty. After that, only 5 odd crores had actually been paid and subsequently it's been suspended. So the whole thing is about the 5 crores that they paid. And therefore, I am only saying that as long as we have gone through the process of hunting for any impropriety, or the possibility of silencing, and if we've done this exhaustively and there is no such thing, then I think we just have to move on in life.
Swati, please go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the. I mentioned to you that we are going through this process together with Cyril to look at the process of succession planning to give due representations. And we do get suggestions of potential candidates, right? We do get, not merely from the founder group, from others as well. We seek, we get. Now, it would be utterly inappropriate for me to say who are these people, whether we're going to appoint them or not. I don't think that the press conference is the place where you would make appointment of directors. You must pardon me, right? I'm only saying that there is a process, and the process is for getting names, and there is no question about it. We do get names, but it is, as I said, ultimately the board takes the decision of how to make sure that we have the right kind of skills. In fact, we have a skill matrix. We look at in fact, Jeff has been doing this for quite some time now. He's developed a skill matrix. Where do we find that we have the right skills, where we do not have the right skills on the board? Do we have the right kind of combination of voices and the experience? And then we go and hunt, and we solicit names. So that is a process which you should not read too much into that.
Sure, sir.
Swati, please go ahead.
Once again, sir.
Yeah.
Please
Once
let
again,
Swati
I'm already
speak.
asking.
Please let Swati speak.
Sir, as you made a point, which is about finding the right skill set, and the board will take a decision basis that. We've seen the promoters talk or ask for a board position. Will the board be open to that suggestion, and will there be some timeline as to when you would address that skill gap that is being talked about?
No, the answer is clear that we are open to suggestions. We are open to every suggestion of every proposal that we have. But it is for the board to say at what time do we require, what kind of an induction, what is the retirement plan that we have, how do we replace people, how do we make sure that the skill matrix is well balanced. So that is a decision that we have to take. And as I said, this is not going to be a bilateral kind of decision process.
Right. And the Panaya acquisition, sir, a lot has been talked about. You want to say?
You want to talk about the Panaya acquisition?
What is the question about Panaya?
The project has not done the.
Chandra, she's.
Of course it did.
Let her ask the question, please.
We followed the complete process on that, and
there is no question. I mean, Rajiv was the certifying officer, and he certified the accounts. The Panaya acquisition was done through a process. We got Deutsche Bank's valuation done, which is the third-party valuation. and within the band of the valuation that they gave, the price was determined. So there was no issue of skipping a process. And based on the process integrity, these accounts were prepared and certified.
Shivani has the mic. Three.
Yeah,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yeah, hi. Sir, good evening. Thank you so much for giving all the clarification. I just have a very simple question. What comes out from what you have said is that the board and the management has been continuously in talks with the founders. Have been in talks with the founders or at certain point of time for whatever. My question is, did the promoters, the particular promoter who has kind of created the story and which the media is having a run at, ever approach the board in confidence to solve these issues or have a word with you in confidence to solve this issue, or the management as well? Thank you.
I'll tell you, I think, Mr. Murthy and I said that, he was gracious enough to suggest that let's do this, take this discussion forward. We would give the inputs to you for you to consider. And let's do this, and we don't need to go to the media, right? We don't need to talk through the media. And that is precisely why you've seen statements from Mr. Murthy saying that, yeah, we made this point, and we will do this. No, so we will do this. We'll continue to do this. There may be some aberration in this kind of relationship. There would be some aberrations, but I think it is not so much what has happened, whether we are able to pull back and then say, for the sake of the institution, in the interest of the institution, can we both, since we both have congruity of interest in this, can we just both sit together and then listen to the comments, the suggestions, the value that is being given to us and take it seriously and then see what we can do to move forward?
For mic one, please. For mic one, please. Yes.
You need a distribution with that.
Please. Please, if you can give us a minute, please. Could we please go follow the? Can you please follow the process we put in place? It's only fair enough to everyone, please.
Mr. Seshasai, मेरा सवाल
I'm going to go to the lady again. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a bias.
सवाल आपसे हिंदी में है, अगर हिंदी में आप जवाब दे पाएं तो बेहतर है, नहीं तो विशाल बोल सकते हैं.
Sorry.
मैं हिंदी में पूछ रही हूँ सर. CNBC आवाज से हूँ, हर्षिता सावंत है मेरा नाम. बार-बार जो भी ओल्ड टाइमर्स हैं, चाहे वो मोहनदास पाई हो, वी बालकृष्णन हो, उनसे हमारी बातचीत हुई है पिछले कुछ दिनों में. उन्होंने ये कहा है कि विशाल सिक्का से प्रोमोटर ग्रुप को, ओल्ड टाइमर्स को कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. अगर कुछ गवर्नेंस के इश्यूज हैं तो आपका नाम सामने आया है. इस पर आप क्या कुछ सफाई देना चाहेंगे? क्योंकि डर यही है, अगर चेयरमैन ऑफ द बोर्ड पर ये आरोप लग रहे हैं कि गवर्नेंस के दिक्कतें हैं और आप शायद बोर्ड को नहीं संभाल पा रहे हैं, इस पर बाजार भी सुनना चाहेंगा. आप क्या कहेंगे?
You see, governance is a collective responsibility of the board, and I want to say that we have an extremely cohesive board. We discuss every issue, find common ground. Sometimes we have fairly wide diversity in opinion, but we find common ground and move forward. We are all committed to the principles of governance, right? So in that process, for sure, there could be, as I said, some issues of perception about lack of governance. These are perceptions. That is why we have now taken the trouble to lay out, and these perceptions are not only peculiar to some of the ex-employees. They are also part of the problem that some of you have. That's why I'm saying here are the facts and figures. We are going to sit here and answer all your questions until you get exhausted, right? And therefore, I mean, so for you to get convinced about it. Now, at the end of the day, you might say, okay, we are convinced, or you say, no, I'm not convinced. But so far as I'm concerned, shareholders have elected me to do a job. The board has asked me to do a job. So long as the board doesn't say that you haven't done the job and therefore go home, I must do the job, right? And I will do the job.
Question for mic 4, please.
Yeah,
mic
I think,
4,
yeah,
please.
it's about...
Mic 4, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Seshasai and Mr. Sika.
Can we please? Okay. Let him ask the question. Okay.
Mr. Sheshasai and Mr. Sika.
No, I think you've got
sir.
too many people.
If the gentleman at the,
Yeah,
if the
sir,
gentleman
good evening.
at the
You
back would
must have
speak,
some
please.
order in this.
Sir, good evening. Vijay Iyer from ET
No,
now.
I'm not going to answer until we have some understanding of how we go.
I'm sorry.
You should
Yeah.
do this. Yeah. So let him finish. He's been asked.
regarding corporate governance. And one quick question I'll push my luck to Mr. Sika. Mr. Sika, you are a new age leader, and every new age leader wants the required level of freedom in terms of running his own ship. So can we expect a strong signal to be sent by you so that you don't have founder promoters in a non-executive position breathing down your neck? Because as far as any CEO is concerned, nobody wants to look over the shoulder for every decision. So those two questions.
Yeah. As I said, we both have had conversation, and we both agree that we need to, in the interest of the organization, make sure that we progress with whatever improvements that we can make. We will discuss where it's possible for us to do those improvements. We will do that in the processes. Where it is not possible, or we already have done, but we have to communicate more, we will do that. But in all this, you must understand that it's important that we all invest enough time to talking to each other, and I'm committing to do that.
And with regard to there is no differences with the promoters, especially with Mr. Murthy. I meet Mr. Murthy probably 4 or 5 times in a year. Every time usually I'm in Bangalore or sometimes elsewhere as well. And it is difficult to explain. I have a very deeply heartfelt relationship with him. We talk about all kinds of things. Earlier today we were talking about the Apple Watch, which I have a watch now after 20 years, and all kinds of other things. And his wisdom and his experience is something that I very deeply value, which includes his criticism. Sometimes it is a good idea to listen to the criticism from the founder. So,
Sajid, please.
So these phrases like breathing down the neck and so forth, I don't subscribe to these at all. I deeply value the advice.
So can you please follow the format, because I think the television channels have asked enough questions. Sajid, once you ask a question, we're going to go to the print media. I think we need the print media to do it. Please go ahead, Sajid. Sajid, please.
No, I think
let
him
the
ask this
print
question.
guys
Sorry,
ask,
please let him finish. He's been standing for a long time.
Sajid,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Mr. Seshasai, this is Sajid here from Bloomberg Quint. Couple of questions here. You spoke about the severance package and how the new management contracts have been redone with respect to the severance package. But you haven't mentioned what is the severance policy you have for KMPs. Secondly,
I mentioned to you that we have done the survey to benchmark the severance.
What is that actually?
I think each country has a different severance
policy.
policy.
What is the severance policy for any KMP when he leaves? How much of severance will he be given?
No, what I'm saying is
how many months salary?
There are different geographies, different benchmarks, and therefore all of them are based on the benchmarks that we have with respect to each geography and the position that we have in. So the process is robust, right? Now, I hope that we don't have another situation of severance anyway. We want our KMPs to stay with us and not have a severance in any case.
The second one is about the NRC policy. With respect to reappointment of directors, when Jeff was appointed, there was a statement in your explanation that it's an exception to the existing policy of the company. Why did you go for that exception? And has the policy now been changed, or now it's going to go back to the old one?
No, the exception at that point of time we explained. Without Jeff, the average age of the board was 2.1 years. And because everybody was new, and I was the oldest. And we believed that it would be very valuable to have Jeff to be with us, because there is always the richness of experience and the historical perspective that he can bring. And therefore, we made an exception at that point of time. Exceptions are exceptions. The policy will remain as long as we can manage to work within that policy. Under circumstances, every policy needs an exception.
We'll go to Mike 4.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry,
Vishal,
you're from ET
thanks.
now. I'm sorry, television is done. Print,
Yeah.
please. Anybody from print, please? Mike 3, please go ahead. Varun, please go ahead.
I think you may please make sure.
Varun, please go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Shishasai. Just two quick questions. Firstly, if you can just help us understand, are the founders, like, the message which I am taking away from this press conference is that founders will always be, worshipped, and their experience is needed. And the board and the management cannot really do anything. They will obviously have these discussions which they have had, and sometimes it may spill over in the public. So are the investors, shareholders, employees, and the media, are you sending them the message that, sir, this is the thing, you have to live with it? These kind of disagreements which often spill over in the public? That's a very direct question, sir, here.
Yeah, I would be very upfront and say that no, we would not like to have anything spilling into the public. Because it is, once it gets into the public, and let me say very clearly that it's not merely the stakeholders who get estranged in this process. You have a lot of people who do not have stakes come into that and muddy the waters, and it becomes very difficult to manage the situation. It is hugely distracting. And therefore, I very, very much hope that we will not have any future occasion when this spills out into the public. And therefore, I'm saying that whatever it takes us for us to do, we have to do this, because this is the job of the board to make sure that we provide a peaceful atmosphere for the management to do its job and discharge its responsibilities. Now, occasionally, as you say, that yes, we will have this kind of things happening. It will be our endeavor not to make it happen because it is distracting. And that is something that I'm saying that we will commit to making further communication.
We go to Mike 4, please. Mike 4, please.
Shakti from
Varun, you finish? Yeah, just one more question, that's all. Varun.
Shakti from the Financial Express. You didn't like the phrase breathing down your neck, but do you think this entire episode has somehow diluted the power at your command? And secondly, for example, let's say you had to even disclose the percentage of the 60,000 kilometers per month that you travel, 8% of that was the chartered flight.
3%, so it corrects me. I don't know, I must... I took the maximum of the 3 just to make sure that you don't later on say it was only 3, but you had another 7 and some other month, and you will have this information. I don't know how, but so therefore I'm sorry to use the one which is maximum.
Well, what is the what was the question?
No. Even disclose that the 60,000
Listen,
kilometers...
I don't think,
No, sir,
let me tell you one thing. It is not appropriate for any material, non-public information to be shared with anybody, any stakeholder. And that principle doesn't change.
Yeah, you have shared something already. I want a question on that.
You have, I don't know, these are questions coming from the media. These are not questions coming from founders.
You said that he traveled 60,000 kilometers for November and December.
Yeah, but this is fine.
No,
I'm saying this is non-material information. I don't think that you're going to use this information
to... That's not even my question. My question is something else. My question is, I felt that you were defensive enough that you had to disclose that only 8% out of your 60,000 kilometers was through chartered flights. Now for a good deal, he has to travel instead of 8%, if let's say 80%. Do you think you will start second guessing yourself always after this entire episode?
Let me answer that question. I think, there is a role for the board, there's a role for the management. So long as we have a policy for that, which we have, so long as there is conformity to that policy, so long as there is cost to value equation, it's the management's prerogative. It's not even the board. I just picked up that as an example of the kind of questions that come from the press. I'm not saying it's from the founder. In fact, there was one curious question that I got, I think, 2 days ago. I mean, I got a barrage of questions on all kinds of things, including some costly dinner that someone ordered. I said, I'll definitely find out, because I think, the way that you put it, it's not good for Vishal's health, so I'll find out about that. So I think I'm only saying, I don't know why you get obsessed on all this kind of things. And therefore I'm saying that please understand, and that's the reason why I said that, we live in a glass house, but please don't get into issues which are non-value adding, and that's a request I'm making. It takes away a huge amount of time. It's non-value adding to the stakeholders. Nobody cares, right?
Mic 1, please. Mic 1, please.
Okay, I think we have done enough on that.
So thanks for the clarity on the variable compensation. If you could just say what are these targets, because let's say at Cognizant, in the past they used to have growth targets which were linked to compensation. So if you can say whether it's growth, you mentioned total shareholder return. So is it linked to returns or is it linked to growth?
Now, it's linked to a complex, as a matrix of targets. I had already said earlier on, and I repeat, that we have a trajectory for the 2020 targets, and the compensation is linked to that trajectory. Now, beyond that, it is our job to see whether those targets are correctly determined, and we therefore have a compensation policy which is commensurate with the achievement in relation to the target, and how do we therefore balance the requirement of conforming to a policy on the one hand and making sure that we're not prisoners of that policy, but and take into account market changes. These are all decisions that every board goes through in every remuneration committee, right? But I don't think that this is the job for all of you to be prejudging. Then we don't need a board. The board's job is just to do that.
Hi, this is Manoj Dara from Z Business.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Hello, so this is Manoj Dara from Z Business, and my question is not on severance package. I have a very basic fundamental question which I will break in two parts. So given the current difficult environment, where the earnings growth is not visible going forward as well, how do you intend to reward your shareholders? And point number two is, how do you see your mergers and acquisition activities going forward as well? Given the huge cash pile you have, can we see a bigger mergers and acquisition before a Vision 2020? Thank you so much.
Do you want to answer that?
So on the capital allocation, as we have always said, the board will from time to time look at the policy, and we did twice the move up from 30 to 40% dividend and then 40 to 50, and we'll consider everything looking at there has been a lot of feedback that we have received from a lot of distinguished people, and when we look out over the next 5 years or so, we have to see what the business environment is like, what are the areas where we need the capital to be deployed. Generally, it is in the area of obviously facilities and infrastructure, it is mergers and acquisitions, and it is strategic growth initiatives for the company. And we'll see what that means, and then we have to prioritize the capital in the order of benefit to the stakeholders, and that is how the board will decide that.
Mic 3, please. Mic 3, please.
Hello. Sir, you said...
nothing. We are not averse to any of the options. Nothing is out of scope.
We do a capital allocation policy review periodically. We'll continue to do that. All these options will be examined, and we will then come back to you when the decision is made. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the severance package was according to the contractual agreement, and nothing wrong in that. Be it 23 crores or 5 crores. Who made that decision to agreeing into that contract, and did you clear with the founders about that particular part? And secondly, you mentioned we all are sitting in the glass building or whatever, and don't stare at us for long. Are you indirectly telling the founding members not to pick on you on and off?
I think no. First of all, I must say that you because of maybe the last couple of days open statements that have been made by some of the founders, you are far too obsessed with this. I want to repeat the fact that we work for the entire body of shareholders. That is the fiduciary responsibility we have. Now, there is a class of people, there's the founder group who have built this institution. We owe it to them to listen to them. We will do what is right for the company, but this is not going to be just a two-way affair. It's going to be multiple stakeholders giving us inputs, and this is the process that we will be committed to.
Mike,
hello,
one, please.
hello. You talk about that you have been consulting founders very often. When you say founders, is it only Mr. Murthy, or it also includes Nandan Nilekani and Grace and other people?
Wait a minute. First of all, the consultation is the word that I'm using, please understand, is that we get inputs, and these inputs are important for us to take. Now, we do consult with other members of the founders also. And regardless of where it comes from, the substance of what is being proposed is what matters to us.
Mike 2, please. Priya, you'll have to give us a minute. We have to do Mike 2, please. Go ahead.
Sir, here, Virendra Singh Gunawat from Aaj Tak India Today Group. मेरे दो सवाल है सर, आपके छोटे छोटे सवाल है कि आप ये कह रहे हैं कि मीडिया को आप कितने भी घंटे बात करेंगे, कन्विंस करने की कोशिश करेंगे, लेकिन अगर इतनी मेहनत अगर आप हर एक स्टेटमेंट आप दे रहे हैं, उसके बाद एक काउंटर स्टेटमेंट मूर्ति साहब की तरफ से आ रहा है जो वो एग्री नहीं करते आपकी तरफ से, तो यदि ये सिचुएशन अगर आती है तो बार बार जब से ये इश्यू सामने उठा है कि आपका कंपैरिजन अब टाटा से होने लगा है, तो क्या आपको लगने लगा है कि ऐसी सिचुएशन अगर आती है कि आप मूर्ति को कन्विंस नहीं कर पाएंगे तो वो फेस ऑफ वाला सिचुएशन आएगा, क्योंकि ये सवाल इन्वेस्टर्स जानना चाहेगा जो मार्केट में इन्फोसिस पे पैसा लगा रहा है?
But that is a speculative situation. Why do you have to now think about that speculative position at all? I hope and I don't expect that will happen. Yeah, as we must have a way of reconciling respective viewpoints. We should have the maturity to do that. And all I've said already, I'm beginning now to repeat the same thing, and I think you're running out of questions, or I'm running out of answers. Therefore, we will do what it takes to have this engagement going on positively. That's all. I think, please don't repeat the same question. We have done the same thing several times over, and I'm beginning to repeat. I have to change my language now.
Sorry, Mike 4, please.
Mr. Sheshai, this is Arun from India Today. I hope I'm not repeating this question, but over the last few days, we have seen several specific proposals come from the co-founders through the media. Unfortunately. One of them was that you step down. The other was there should be a co-chairman. Another one was that there should be independent directors, new independent directors. Even some names had been suggested. So could you please tell that, is there any specific progress that you have made on this front, or at least broken some eyes with the founders on this?
Again, this is a repetition. I cannot do anything more than say that you can get inputs, get proposals from everybody. What we need to be judged about is that are we accepting these proposals and implementing them in the best interest of the company or not? That's the only thing. I can't be answering as to why there are proposals. It's a good thing to have proposals. I can't control that. But I can only control what we will implement in the interest of the company. That's my responsibility. And I will do it.
Mike 3, please.
Yeah, I think we are beginning to now exhaust.
Mike 3, please. Please use the mic to ask the question.
No.
Shilpa, please go ahead.
So Rajiv Bansal quit in October 2015, but the first set of disclosure came in the month of March 2016. Why was there a delay in the lag of disclosure, especially with the key management personnel?
No, there are disclosure standards in relation to what you do for key managerial personnel, and we have conformed to those disclosure standards. Whether it was reporting in the December accounts or in the later accounts filed in April, we have conformed to what is required. Now, the question that you're asking is something that we've also asked ourselves. Should we call out and go beyond that? And that's a good learning. Yes, in future we'll say that way we think, given beyond the requirement, if there is a need for a call out, we'll call out on this. Okay, that's a good learning. But this is not to mean that we have not done our job of disclosing or conforming the disclosure requirements.
Mike 1, please. Shilpa, we have to go to the next question, please.
Mr.
Mike 1,
Seshasai, this is Avik Datta.
Shilpa, we have one question from each person. We can go to the next question, please.
This is Avik Datta from Forbes India. Just wanted to ask you, you mentioned that the severance package to Rajiv has been suspended after 5 odd crores that has been paid to him. can we assume that it is likely to remain suspended or renegotiated? And if so, then do you foresee a legal challenge because you contractually agreed to pay him that money?
No, this is the process that we are currently going through. It is a legal process. Therefore, I cannot now say what the outcome will be. Again, if I say what is the process by which we have arrived at it, we went through a legal firm which looked at what are the obligations under the employment agreement, whether there's been a discharge of that obligation or not, and therefore there is a discussion, there is a conversation that's going on now. And it's a legal process, and therefore I do not want now at this stage to say what will be the outcome of that, but we'll go by what is correct and what is our responsibility.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.